Steve deals with them all the time.
We'll wait till
We are live,
Shannon's there.
and Shannon is there.
Okay.
You can see her up there.
Can you hear us, Shannon?
Yes, I can.
Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the work session today. Nice to see everybody. We're here. Councilor Roden can't make it. She will be here for the council meeting, but she wasn't able to get here in time for today's meeting for the work session. Shannon is here on Zoom. She'll be on Zoom today. And hi. Hi. Okay. Ms. West, is it to you and your staff?
It is. I think Gerald's going to start us off.
So I think you've all read in my reports that go out to the council a water management conservation plan. It's a requirement of the state through the Oregon Administrative Rules. And basically what it does is it sets in place a way for cities to adopt rules for managing their water responsibly. Because it's a limited resource and we don't want to waste it, and waste costs us money. So we just submitted our water management conservation plan to Oregon Water Resources. The public comment period is over. They had a few minor comments come back to us, and our consultants are working on that. I anticipate that they'll probably approve that by the end of May or in June. In that, there's some things that we have to do as a city in order to be in compliance with it. And one of them is a rate structure that kind of helps nudge people into conservation. And by adopting the upcoming rate with a tiered structure, we'll accomplish 4 of the items that are on that water management conservation plan. So we get it adopted, and right away we're going to comply with 4 of the measures that are in there. So what Steve's been working on is putting together a tiered rate structure. This is something that's done in a bunch of other cities throughout the state because they have water management and conservation plans. But we look specifically at the users in this city at the peak month, which is August, and broke it down into several tiers and a recommendation to utilize that tier pricing. So I'll let Steve go over the rest of it.
Thank you. You've got in your packet, Karen, if we could put up the PowerPoint, we'll walk you through it. I think you've seen this in your packets. Just to give you a background, your current water rate structure does have a incentive to use less now. You've got a base charge that is fixed for everybody, and then you've got a volume charge. And the more water that you use, the more you pay. But it's constant. It's a constant dollar amount per 100 cubic feet. 37, I haven't got the number, $3 and something cents per 100 cubic feet. So if you use very small amount of water, you pay the same unit cost as somebody that uses a lot. So what we've done is we took a look at August of 2023, and we looked at the water that was consumed by every 3/4 inch meter during that month. And go ahead, Karen, next slide.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it on Zoom, sorry.
Oh,
And these are all of the residential users.
right.
Well, I was gonna ask 3/4 inch
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
what all of us
And
have in
there's
our.
a lot of the businesses that are on 3/4 inch meters, and some of them showed up in here, and their use is very comparable to or below what a average single family residential, so they would be in that base category.
Where is this at in the packet? I didn't see
It's not in.
It's
Oh,
it's
it's
not.
not.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I didn't see.
I was going to ask exactly the same question.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay,
It's
so
in
this
the
is
other
new.
packet.
It's in a different packet somewhere, okay. Okay, you're including us.
And so while they're looking at, can I ask so this is a state mandated type of thing?
Yes,
Yes.
it is. It's through our management and conservation plan, and we're required to put things into place that encourage conservation. It doesn't mean that we're forcing them in. if they want to use that much water, they can. They're just going to pay a premium for it, depending on how much they use.
Okay.
So the next question you're gonna ask yourself then is if we're gonna put in this tiered rate structure so that you pay more per unit as you use more water, well, where do the tiers come in? And what is the prices on those tiers? So what we did is that once again, we looked at August of 2023 actuals, and we're gonna create a statistical analysis that's called a frequency distribution. We're gonna map for each of the accounts of these 2,600 and change, I'll go through the numbers with you in a minute, how many use 1 unit? How many use 2? How many use 3, 5, 10, 15, 20? And we look at that consumption curve. That's called a frequency distribution. And then we're also going to look at something called a standard deviation, and I'll tell you what that's all about in a minute. But it's a very important tool that we use in engineering to look at inference and means of central tendency. So, and then we're going to take a look at the proposed pricing structure for you to consider, and then we're going to look at sample bills with and without a pricing structure, because that's something you're going to want to know. So, go ahead, Karen. So, there were 2,486 accounts. These 3 quarters, you're right, they're the single family, predominantly. It's water sold at the peak demand month. What we're trying to do is manage this peak. The most expensive water we sell is the peak. He has to design a water system to serve the peak. If he did it for average, we could cut your capital costs down a whole bunch in the future, but something above the peak or above the average is not going to get served. So he still has to serve the peak.
And I'm gonna drop in there in just a minute, because if you've seen our capital improvement plan, if we could get that down, right, it's gonna cost our ratepayers less because we don't have to build as much, so,
As quickly.
as quickly.
We defer and we diminish. And that's going to show up in storage and in production predominantly. So those are the 2 costs that he has to build, extra storage to meet that peak. Go ahead.
Remember me telling you about we burned up the pumps at the North Water Treatment Plant? That's using so much water that it actually shredded the impellers on the inside of the pumps
To serve that dark
to
peak.
serve that peak.
That's
So
why we want to
that's
shave
why
that
we
peak.
Push that down.
The average consumption for all of the meters in the sample was 14.52 CCF. CCF is 100 cubic feet. You get billed for water in units of 100 cubic feet. 748.1 gallons equals 100 cubic feet. And we'll do some other comparisons in a second here to talk about that, like how much water is in a swimming pool and how much water did somebody use relative to a swimming pool, so on. The next one here, bear with me.
Can you move our picture?
Thank you. Okay, now what we've got here, see that shape of that curve? That's the frequency distribution I talked about, and on the x-axis is the number of units, those CCFs we talked about, from 0 to 50. And then on the y-axis, it's the number. As you can see, there were a high number of zeros, almost 100 had 0 consumption. That was to be expected, because you've got move-ins and move-outs and vacancies in a city of this size. Very expected. Last month, when we were doing rate comparisons, and we told you we did rates based on 6 units of consumption per month, and somebody asked, where'd that come from? I said, well, that was our system average. Even in August, the highest number of observed consumptions, the mode of the class, was still 6 units. That tells us that there are a lot of people in this city that are price conscious of their water bills. So there is conservation going on now. So remember I talked about that standard deviation. What a standard deviation is very simply, we look at each one of those dots on that chart and we say, how far is that dot from the mean of the distribution? And then we chart the average of all of those differences. The average of the differences from the mean is the standard deviation, and it happens to be 14 units. So that first red arrow shows one standard deviation. 63% or 1,566 accounts lie within one standard deviation of the mean. We would propose that to be your base block and would have no penalty in it. So if you choose to do this, 63% of the people are already good eggs. They're doing a good job. They're within one standard deviation of the mean. Now, the first conservation block is 2 standard deviations from the mean, between 14 and 30, call it, units of consumption. 693 accounts, 28% of the total sample were within 2 standard deviations of the mean. We want to send these people a signal to move them to the left.
Are these apartment buildings?
No,
All
these are single-family homes.
all 3/4 inch single families.
Yeah.
And the other one that's going to be interesting
Out
here
of
is
693, they're all single family.
Yeah.
or very small business.
And the ones on the far right of that, they're using in the 30, they're using 5 times the amount of the average single family home.
Think about that. The average single
So is
family
this water
using
your lawn, like what do you think?
It's absolutely irrigation.
Irrigation.
It's absolutely irrigation. And the culprit of the peak that causes our problems with the peak is not the commercials, it's not the industrials, it's always the residential class because of irrigation. So now the second block that we would propose would be with a 2 and 3 standard. We've got a couple of these guys. See that peak out on the end, 50 or more? We've got some accounts that were over 100 units, 130 units. And
20 times.
20 times.
That'd be like one week.
No, I actually looked at the addresses. I went through everybody that was 50 and over, and I looked at the addresses throughout the city. There's a small smattering of them in the center, predominantly. The rest of them are in the south and north ends of the city. And it's irrigation.
We've got 180 units. Now think of an Olympic swimming pool, 50 meters by 25 meters by 2 meters deep. That's 660,000 gallons. This customer consumed 135,000 gallons, or 20% of an Olympic-sized swimming pool in 1 month. Yeah, so we want to send a signal to these folks that
How can that be irrigation?
I know, that's what I'm like.
Oh, like, they must have a pool.
That's a set and forget.
Yeah.
And so when people buy a brand new house and it's got landscaping that's
Well, I
in
think
it,
it's actually required for some of the HOA.
And-
is that right?
and
Like to keep it.
what they do is they set it up so that it's green and lush. So there's the landscapers that are there until the people buy it. They fertilize, they overwater, everything is green and lush. But when the house is sold, the landscapers go on to the next one. The people who take over the house don't necessarily know that their timer is set to just water and water and water and water. And unless they've had an irrigation system, they may not know to reset it down. So they have these in brand new houses and areas with large yards and folks who want to mow their grass really short during the summertime, because the taller the grass is, the better it retains water in the summertime. They want to mow it really short, almost like a putting green. They have to water and fertilize a lot more to keep it green.
And it could be an acre lot, an acre and a half.
And Mr. Mayor, Shannon has a raised hand.
Thanks,
Shannon?
Karen. Yeah, thank you. Discounting that first section, I understand the irrigation stuff, but how can you make an assumption that the other 2 categories are actually conserving, or is that just their incidental use? And how would I know what category I fall into?
So I can tell you from working in a couple of different cities that folks here in Independence use quite a bit less water in that base block than the other places that I've worked. So they are already doing a good job of conserving water.
And I think they're already price conscious of their water. It's not that they have conservation in their hearts for the sake of conservation, they want to lower their water bills. And they know that if I use less water, I'll pay a smaller bill. And they see that.
Well, and I see this as an opportunity too, considering the public safety fee that's going to be enacted, is to maybe get some real conservation communication out to the community so that they can do even better.
Yeah, sure, no question. And as Kenna had said, the more we can shave the peak in the hottest months of the year, we can reduce that peak, we can reduce our future capital expenditures on storage and on production. There really is a future savings from capital investment in terms of the system. In November, December, January, you're not going to see this sort of consumption pattern. Everybody's going to be at 6 or 5 units because there's no outdoor irrigation. It's the irrigation in August that we really want to manage better. So it's a snapshot in time. Go ahead, Karen, next slide then. So here is a snap then of what we're proposing to you. The base block, no conservation pricing premium. We would simply, you continue to pay what you're paying now. That would be from 0 to 14 units per month, anywhere in that range. And that's 63% of the accounts. The current price is $3.33 per 100 cubic feet, in addition to the base charge that you pay every month. Don't get me wrong. Now, on the conservation block number 1, we're proposing a 10% premium for consumption within that 15 to 30 unit block. And that would be $3.66 for water sold in that tier. So and I'll keep in mind now, the customer who uses 30 units, the first 15 units will be priced at $3.33. The next 15 units will be priced at $3.66.
We're trying to give them a cost nudge to get them to come back down into that base block.
And then that same customer, say that does 50 units, he would pay $3.33 for the first 15, $3.66 for the next 15, and then $4.16 for anything over 30. This is how these systems work, and they work all over the country, frankly, this way. Some are extremely draconian in arid regions of the nation, but here in Oregon, we've got some very severe prices on other communities.
And we're not telling people they have to reduce their water use. What we're saying is we're encouraging you to conserve water. If you want to use more water, that's okay. But you're going to pay for the impact to the system if you want to use that extra water, because it has an effect on everybody else who is staying in the lower tiers of the structure. So in order to offset the cost for folks down in the base tier, the higher tiers are going to have to fork forward more money for those upsizing and replacements.
Go ahead, next slide. Now here is a chart that shows what the price would be across that range of consumption. And as you see at the 0, where both lines cross the y-axis, the $34.79, that's your monthly base charge. That's what you pay if you use 0 units, you're going to pay just a base charge. Now anything between 0 and 15 units, you'll notice the lines converge. There's no penalty in that block. Now we start to get divergence after 15, and then the slopes decrease even more after 30. So as you can see, someone that's using 50 units, which is a lot of water, 37,000 gallons of water, currently under the current rate structure, they're paying $2.01 per month on their water bill. Under this structure, then you'd be paying $223 a month. So that's where the differential is. But real key here is in that base block, there is no penalty. And 63% of all the customers we observed in August would be in that no penalty block.
Am I reading this wrong? It's only like a $21 difference?
On the outer edge?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So someone who's using a swimming pool, an Olympic swimming pool size amount of water is only gonna pay $20 more?
Based on a 10% and 25%
That's right.
incremental cost. you can,
Once they get that high, it's gonna be that much.
Yeah,
Each unit is gonna be.
Each unit is more.
yeah.
But you're right, and now I guess the question you're asking is, should it be higher, should it be lower, should that penalty be
Kinda.
higher?
Because, I mean,
Because the answer is, it's up to you. The math of the tiers is pretty clear with our standard deviation analysis. The pricing is a function of your choice.
Yeah, so right now, based on some of the stuff that Steve gave me from other cities, we put it together for you to see with a 10% increase and a 25% increase. You could choose to do a 20% increase, 50% increase, 35% increase, and a 100% increase.
Or a
It-
but these are not farms, there's no farm.
No farms,
nobody's
there's-
farming on this
no,
place,
no,
this is strictly
This is
just
strictly
water
ornamental
their grass.
irrigation.
This is landscaping. I
So
looked
it
at all
wouldn't make
different
any
properties,
difference.
and they're very lush green lawns and a whole bunch of landscaping.
Marilyn?
if you had no children or 10 children, it's all gonna be in that, you could be likely in that first 68%.
Right, that's exactly right.
Question? So we're talking right now about residential. Is, is there any consideration for industrial business or schools?
No, right now, we don't have any industrial or commercial that is in that much higher class.
Okay.
That would be like a Pepsi bottler or,
Canning operation?
canning, food canning operation.
Steinfeld pickle,
A
something
whole
like
bunch,
that.
they use a whole bunch of water, not only for product, but they also use it for cleaning and everything else. We don't have that in there. At a future point, you could choose to look at, do you want those businesses, what's the impact of the businesses, and then set up a completely different tier for commercial industrial based on what are they doing?
But for the most part, the residential is where the focus and the impact is.
It's like 90.
93% of all of your accounts are single-family residential.
Kind of similar thought, like I was surprised it's only 20,
Yeah, I mean,
$27 for
yeah.
that much water, that is a lot.
It's a lot of water.
How many, like, in the average household compared to the Olympic swimming pool person or household, are we talking like 20 to 1 usage? Is that
Oh, yeah.
close? Like 20 households use as much as the one
So
household?
the round numbers, the 50 is almost 10 times. But we have some users that are as high as 20 times.
Right.
The middle of the range, 30, they're 6 times an average single family home. And I mean, I drove my kids nuts about wasting water, big surprise. But I can't understand how someone could, because I've seen high uses like that in the wintertime. It's like somebody standing in the kitchen turning on the faucet while they're cutting vegetables and letting the faucet run and rinsing stuff off, but still letting it run the whole time while they're chopping things up. These aren't leaks. It's not like they have a leak, because the finance department does a really good job of watching for spikes. And then they contact people right away with, hey, you have a really high use, you need to check and see if you got a leak. And then we have a thing set up where they don't get charged for it if they get it fixed. So finance is on top of those. These are just constant water use and setting irrigation systems and just letting them run.
Year-round sometimes?
This is just looking at August.
I
so
know
it's
it
just
is, but are they likely to run it 10 months out of the year?
As soon as the weather warms up and the rain starts stopping, I bet you they go over and flip it to
Just-
on.
And don't reset anything, just turn it on.
And so this is all about a polite nudge.
That's all it is.
And it gives the opportunity to, as Shannon suggested,
an education opportunity.
I think this is
Just,
education is as critical component to this as the numbers are, because I've done this all around the country and I've had a situation where it simply didn't work. Mercer Island, Washington, it's a suburb of Seattle. It's a one of the wealthiest communities in America, and they buy all of their water from Seattle, which is strange. They're an island in the middle of Lake Washington, and they gotta have water piped from Seattle, and Seattle charges them extremely high peaking prices. And we went in and did this is what we're doing right here, and we did 25% and 50% in their 2 tiers, and we saw no change. Then we did 50% and 100%, and the consumption stayed. These really rich folks with really huge properties didn't care. They said, I'll pay. So they just kept paying. So that premium that they were paying on the conservation charges went to pay for the higher purchased water cost from Seattle. And Mercer Island, said, I still gotta build more storage. But these folks just, no matter what price signal they gave them, they said, I'll pay it.
so what we're looking at, as far as bringing forward a rate structure to you at the next council meeting is, I have this built in with the 10 and 25%. The tiered pricing doesn't actually, the price changes that we talked about for the treatment plant and the other stuff, those would go into effect on July 1. Everybody would get charged for that. But the tiered pricing wouldn't actually go into effect until January 1. The reason why we're doing that is we don't want to hit people in the summertime without any communication or notification and catch them blindsided. Okay? So the plan is to, starting in July, send notifications out about this pricing structure that will go into place on January 1, which won't affect them because they're not irrigating, and that these prices will be in effect in the next summer when they start watering. They're going to be paying a premium if they're using a lot more water. The only question that I have for you folks is, are you okay with starting with this 10%, 25%? We can let it ride for a while, and if you choose to, we can come back and restructure it with a higher percentage if we're not seeing any change after the summer. So it's something that you can tweak and adjust as time goes on.
If you did load it with higher percentages, would that take some of the payment burden off the base one?
No.
Okay.
No, because the base one is already set up. The base one is set up to cover the costs going forward with the assumption that the price points and the higher, everybody's gonna force down into the base. So I can't collect less, lower it down, and then everybody moves to the base, and now I don't have enough, so I gotta raise the rate.
And our real objective here is to get people to use less water on the outside of that curve. We want
to collect more money.
not to collect more money,
Yeah.
but to change that behavior to help us manage the peak.
But
It's not a revenue issue here.
in the long run, it could reduce the price of the capital improvement project.
It pushes the need for the improvements and upgrades, not treatment plant, but some of the other projects that you guys don't even know about that were in the master plan that I've got to think about, when are those gonna hit? And let's say something was gonna hit in 7 or 8 years, if I can get some of those folks to use less water, it may push it out to 9, 10 years, which if I don't need the money right away, we can kind of keep that rate structure, instead of going like this, going more like this. It just pushes off the need a little farther down the road and gives us more time to work on things.
Steve, since you've worked with us for a long time, and as you pointed out, you work with lots of cities. Now, using a crystal ball and knowing that you don't have data,
Right.
okay, so just your gut feeling, what's your feeling after looking at all of our numbers and usages and stuff? What would you professionally guess I like that professional and guess. What would you think, what do you think is gonna happen?
Well, what I think is gonna happen is, most importantly, is what you're gonna discuss next week or next month is that, well, we're gonna recommend a 5.5% general increase for the water plant. So you're gonna be facing general rate increases. The cumulative compounding effect of higher water rates in and of itself is gonna send a price signal for people to conserve. What I can tell you, based on my experience, is those people that are used over 50, they're not gonna change their behavior. They're wealthy people who love their lawns and they're gonna pay. And they're not gonna change their behavior. And we can't, in areas of Nevada, Arizona, and Southern California, they got water cops. You see a green lawn, they'll shut off your water. They've got the authority to do that. We're not gonna do that. But those people way out on the far end of the curve, they're not gonna change. And I've noticed that forever when I'm doing this stuff is they don't. But what we're gonna really try to do, Karen, can you go back to that original chart? One more. There you go. What we want to capture is those people from roughly 20 units to 40 units, in between the belly of that curve down there, all that stuff heading to the right. If we can get them moving in more toward 15 and 14, I'll consider that a big. So if we can get 700 of those accounts to move to the left, that'll be a success. Those guys, that big chart spike at the right, over 50, I don't think we're gonna change their behavior.
Yeah, there's 69 customers.
69 of those customers,
Are over 50.
and they're gonna consume because they're wealthy folks with big yards and they love their irrigation in the summer, and that's what they're gonna do. And unless we have a legislative move that says you can't do it, they're gonna do it. And we're not the water cops.
So I'm kind of inclined to, I'm thinking about the summer and I'm thinking about the families that don't have AC and they need to throw a pool up and cool their kids off and stuff. So those people are not gonna be in the extreme section, they're gonna be in maybe a little bit more water usage, but it won't be detrimental in theory.
Right.
But the people on the really extreme right, that are,
Consistent
that's
high users.
maybe that number, I hate taxes, but maybe that number just seems wasteful, and I don't know all the details of it, but it does seem very wasteful for water. That number be a much higher percentage, that's my opinion.
10%, the 25% is what you're talking about?
Yeah, and to fill a swimming pool, so, in 1 month, let's say they filled it in May, they would have an initial price spike that 1 month. But unless it's over 100 degrees every single day and there's a lot of evaporation coming off the pool, they're really not gonna add.
Yeah.
No,
That's
we've
true.
had pool before, we did the
Yeah.
initial one.
It's a
and then
one-time, and
we
then
maintain
you just.
Yeah.
it. And you can shock it each year, and I mean, there's things that you can do with it to not refill it every year. But I guess that's my opinion is keep in the initial, as the graph, not this graph, but that other graph is going up, there is gonna be a little spike in the summer, cooling off, people cooling off and things like that, but I don't really wanna penalize them as much. But like the people who are using excessive, once you're getting into an Olympic-sized swimming pool, maybe you can't afford to pay more than, I think it was 25% was what the suggested increase.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's.
I think maybe more than that. I
and
don't know
even
what you
filling
guys
a
would
pool, if the average is around 6, they're not gonna go outside of the base block by filling their pool.
I mean, these are,
think. Like even on the 5,000 gallons.
yeah,
That's,
yeah,
That's still.
they're gonna be,
they'll still be within.
for 1 month, they'd go from 5 or 6 to 10 or 11.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, I agree, I think for people in that far, 50s, that is just an astronomical amount of water. And I agree, I don't think paying an extra $20 a month is a good, they're not in this business.
No.
So if I could clarify, I'm kind of hearing that you want to leave block 1 at 10%, but we're just looking at block 2, or,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Because this is a no block and then block
Right,
two.
Right.
it's base block, block 1, block 2.
So am I hearing that block 1 you want to leave alone?
To kind of start with.
I kind of feel bad for new construction because I do think that if they're in an HOA, which I think, I know paving per.
Well, how about this? Let me put this proposal to you. To kick this thing off of Bombay, let's start with 10,
I could
25.
do 10, I could agree to 10 in that
And then
one, but
come
that
back
one.
to me in a year's time with the same data for August of 2024 and say, did our pricing change behavior? We can have data to tell you if that pricing did indeed change.
I think that second block, I mean, I'd be comfortable with more than 40%
In the second one.
in the second block.
Oh, the far one,
Yeah, the-
sorry, it's 0, 1, 2.
Yeah, zero.
Yeah, 0, 1, 2.
Block number two, and then, yeah, keeping block number 1, 10%, see what that incentivizes people, but I think the education part would be,
Education is critical to this.
yeah, and I don't know if like OSU extensions could maybe lend a hand on getting, they have materials that are out there already on how to conserve water, and maybe there's just a, we can partner with them
Is that the backflow, who does backflow tests or?
OSU extension does, wide variety of.
The city does backflow tests?
Yeah,
So
well,
that
we
they
don't do the
test.
testing, we make sure that they are tested.
They are
You require the
Yeah.
testing.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah,
Dee and I were
contract,
talking
and you
about.
hire a
that.
contractor to
Yeah.
test the results.
You know, as we talk about this, there's the, you know, everybody's having conversations about water all over the West.
Oh, yeah.
Thank God we're not Fort George in Alberta.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but my thought here is that once we start letting people know, okay, and it's not always how much, it's that there's a difference. Because I can see parents telling a kid, turn off the water, we want to say, you know, it's setting that up. The other part is that education, I think that you're talking about, is that, okay, you want to irrigate, that's fine. Don't irrigate during the day. Irrigate at a better time, you know, you can irrigate at night or in the evenings as opposed to during the daytime. You won't and don't use as much. You can
Or keep
turn
the
it.
grass a little longer.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, you can, you can turn it down a hunk. And what I'm thinking is that part of the education, so again, as you point out, this is not a revenue issue.
This is not a
This
revenue
is about getting people to think, thinking about water, because water is, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. That says my friends from the eastern side. But I think that provides just enough little incentive, but it gives a reason. Does that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
keeping your grass a little longer, making sure that you have a good mulch bed in your planter areas so that that moisture that gets down there doesn't just evaporate off the top as soon as the sun and the heat hits it. There's a whole bunch of literature and, you know, little pamphlets and stuff, and we already have some stuff on our website, but the whole thing is that we're gonna be pushing this out to ratepayers through through their bills. You know, conserve water, and here's the things that are coming, and we'll do a little FAQ for them, and the intent is to do it several times through the year before we get to the spring when people are really starting to water. And then they've had the opportunity to read the material, educate themselves, and make decisions on how they want to water and how they want to use their water.
We'll also push it out, because a lot of people don't actually see their bills, so we'll also push it out. We're lucky, right? We have one of the best communication directors in the state. And you're gonna hear from him tonight, and all of the, where he sends it. So he will be working with Gerald in our Public Works to get that out on Facebook, to get that out on the website, to get that out in the newsletter, to get that out wherever we can
This
get
is so
this.
critical to this process here. And we gotta just raise our hands and wave and wave. This is not a revenue generation issue by the city. We're not out there trying to make more money. We're trying to manage our resource better. Can you help us by using less? That's
I
it.
think making it very clear that majority of the people fall in it doesn't really affect me, will be very helpful.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they're already gonna see their rates going up and stuff, so.
I have one more question, but I want to ask the professional over here who is in real estate. HOAs, are there HOAs who actually require irrigation?
I don't know for sure if they have that in there, because a lot of the HOAs around here are an HOA for a period of time and then they kind of die
And then, yeah,
Yeah, but like Edwards Edition, you know, that is still there, but no, that's why they put in irrigation in some of them is, and it's in part of the package of the home is because it's required, so you have to read the HOAs for each of the subdivisions.
so that might be another little avenue of education to say, if we're going down the road of water conservation, let those groups know so that they can make some changes.
But
And
that's also, you can water, you know, at night or,
Yes,
everything's on a timer, so you can pick the best possible time
Right.
to water.
And as having been a president of an HOA,
Oh,
never again.
That would have been tough.
You can't get the rest of the members of the HOA to vote to modify
yes.
your HOA rules.
It's not like the Constitution.
No, and you can modify them, and if you have enough people in the HOA who are conservation minded, you can change those rules.
Shannon, go ahead.
My development, every single house has an irrigation system. That doesn't mean everybody uses it. But I think whatever kind of communication we come out with has to be geared towards those kinds of folks, especially because the incentive is to keep the development looking nice and green. And, you know, a lot of people have put in some very expensive landscaping in addition to what was put in initially and don't want to see it die. So I think I heard the mayor's comments about water at night. Maybe you can ratchet it back a little bit if you do that and add more mulch. I think those are good suggestions for the community.
Sounds like we have a plan.
I'm clear to make sure that we are on, I get the, block 1 is 10%, block 2, we're bouncing back and forth, and I don't think we received clear direction.
Where are you? And there is no right or wrong answer here.
No.
It just said
It's
it.
a policy call on your parts. There is no book that we have in the American Water Works that says tier 2 is 40%.
Does 25 seem okay with folks as a starting place?
Well, I think his comment about monitor it for a year and
That's
take
what I
a
was
look at
suggesting.
August of
That's the
next year.
beauty of this, is we can come back and next year we can overlay off the 2020, August 2024 chart and say, did our pricing strategy change behavior?
We wouldn't know this summer, right?
No, because they can't raise it.
No,
It
but
wouldn't go into effect until.
we would know by the fall because we'll have all of the use in for August and then we can extract that out and get
But
it.
what
to-
you will have if you choose is a 5% general rate increase that you're gonna implement July 1st. That's another price signal to the consumer to use less. We'll see, but we would definitely wanna bring, I'm interested to find out, just to take a look and overlay the 24 data against the 23, just to see.
What other cities do you know off the top of
I've
your
got some right on my, just this, because we did this for Malala 2 years ago, and they asked, well, what's everybody else doing? So we picked up Aurora, Canby, Carlton, Hubbard, Wilsonville, and Woodburn. They all have tiered rate structures. And to answer your question, Canby, their first tier is 25%, their second tier is 75%.
Wow.
Carlton, their first tier is no charge, and then their second tier is 45%. One extra tier, they don't have 2 tiers. Anything over 4 cubic feet. And the other one, Aurora, they have 7%, 14%. Woodburn, 29% and 76%. So it's all over the place.
Yeah.
That's where I'm kind of leaning on that
Much higher.
second, whatever you call it.
Second block.
The second
block.
Yeah,
The second block is going a lot higher.
a lot higher.
Yeah.
Remember, and it's only charging for those increments over 30 units. So they're participating in the low cost, and then the 10%, they're just paying for that stuff over the 30, so.
Well, all of us in the base block, I'm in the base block, are very much like, you know, our water bills keep going up and it's very frustrating. And then to hear that there's somebody using an Olympic-sized swimming pool amount of water it's.
But they're paying for it.
Right, and they're, well,
But they're paying for it.
but they're not paying much for it when you look at.
Well, they're not paying
That's all.
relative because it's that same unit cost.
Right, so I actually think this is a good idea.
So,
So what do you wanna go with?
I guess where I'm thinking, so
75, what? That's my vote.
so 20% on block 1 and 75 on 2. Sorry, Councilor Schwartz, sorry, I cut you off.
no, it's all right. Because we wouldn't implement this until
January next year,
So we could start doing some education right away.
Right away.
This is coming,
right away.
see if that makes an impact, but I don't, this one is a little impact. But, I mean, I agree, I would be comfortable higher, especially on block two.
Okay, what's higher?
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is the tough one.
Sorry.
This is why you're getting paid so much.
I need another cookie.
I mean, block one, I'd be fine even keeping that at 10% or 20%. Seems.
No, so I'd say 20% on that one, and then for block two, what would you
I would say at least 40 or more, higher. But
I would agree with that.
10 and 40, is that what I'm hearing, you guys?
Should we 10, 20?
But Kathy, what's, wait, it's.
Yeah. Where are you at?
Well, I mean, I'm that base block
I know,
user.
yeah.
I mean, I pay the same amount every month, it's super predictable. I mean, I'm thinking back to when I had like 5 extra kids at my house, and I've still never exited that base block.
It's all irrigation, I guarantee you.
And I mean,
Indoor
I had kids playing on
indoor
the
water
lawn.
use, you can't really use that much water, it's clearly outdoor irrigation.
But even
water.
in the summer, like I water my veggie garden and I water pots on the flat, you know, on the deck and all, I mean, I'm using more water and it's still not.
But you're under the
Nowhere close. Well, and I love the
Close to
fact
that.
that that's like 65% of our residents.
Right.
Sure.
Way
Right.
over on the left, so
Right.
thank you, Independence.
Yeah, so I think most people are falling into that, and I think we do really need to incentivize people, and I think if we did like 20% on block number 1 in May, I mean,
But yeah, I mean,
So we got
I
block
mean, 50's not unreasonable when we get to block 2, I don't think.
I mean, didn't you say there were a couple of cities that third tier was 75?
Yeah, Woodburn 76,
And
Canby 75.
If that's the group that is essentially wearing the equipment down the fastest, there should be a cost associated with that.
So what do you think for block one, what would you like?
I'd rather see block one stay where it is and a small increment for the middle one and then really tack it onto the third one.
So base block would stay the same,
Yeah.
block one, what number would you like?
Right now, it's at 10.
Right now, we're saying 10%, that's
Okay.
a staff recommendation.
And that I could go with, but I'd like to see the third section to the far right be significantly more.
40%, 50%,
Like what, like, give me a number.
75%?
75, all right, good. 75.
Sounds like an auction go.
That's how this is
Well, yeah,
done, I know you
right.
wanna take a shower when you're done with
I
this.
mean, if what we're really trying to do is at least maybe push them,
Yeah.
into block 1,
Right,
then
right.
I,
And if the
yeah, I
choice
mean,
is to not,
I would vote it with 75.
and if the choice is to not conserve for whatever, either I don't know how to turn it down, or I don't know how to reset it, or I want my green lawns, period,
Okay,
no matter
whatever.
what, when and where I want them, then that should have a premium, because that is wearing out the equipment faster.
So Shannon, what do you want?
Loser?
Earth to Shannon, come in, Shannon, over.
You might be on mute.
You're on mute, Shannon.
Or did you mute her? Took a break. She might have taken a bio break.
Okay.
She's checking her water meter.
Yeah.
Or her water
I mean,
bill.
I'm comfortable with since,
Were you okay with 10 or 20% on the base? You said 75% in the upper one.
Yeah, either,
can we go to that one chart that has the dollar breakup?
Yeah, the last graph.
I just think one time I did try to water my lawn, and I still fell in the base group.
Mhm.
So even if you're watering your lawn in a normal way, you're not
There
gonna
you
go
go,
past
if
that
you're
base.
watering responsibly, a lot of these people are watering the street, they're watering the sidewalks
Yeah.
as they're,
I mean-
as they're using that kind of water.
I like
They're
your
wasting.
comment, the set and forget.
So this is based on the block 1 at 10%, block 2 at 25%. Now you can see the price differentials per month.
Yeah.
Taking into account both base charge and the use charge.
And right now I have 2 people for that first block at 20% and 2 at 10%. Average is 15.
That's 15% for the first
And
block.
then in the last one, I have 3 75s and 140.
I'm good at 75.
Whoa, right, like.
Okay.
75.
75.
So with that direction, we will take this all back, get all the numbers put together, we'll bring it to you at council, next council
It'll
meeting.
be on the rate
It'll
structure.
be in the rate
And
structure.
you will have the opportunity to talk about it, do all the things.
Now, does base get left on?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
the only thing that happens to base is they have that base increase, we talked about that 5%, that 5.5%. That is built in to the structure, but the increments would be 15% more for that first tier and 75% more for the second tier of that rate structure.
And we can't lower the base at all if we go
It's,
crazy on the.
Not now.
Unless everybody on the right-hand side says, I'm gonna continue to use water and I have a surplus of money that would allow us to reduce the rate, but I've gotta be able to collect that cash on hand.
Just to
over
give you a
couple
sense
years.
of how our revenue is recovered, and this is important for you guys, is roughly 55% or 52% of all your revenue comes from the base charge. Remember, you've got debt services, and you've got other fixed costs that don't vary regardless of the amount of water you sell. And then roughly 45% is coming from this volume charge. So that's why we need that base charge. It's so important because a large percentage of your costs of the water system are fixed across any range of production or sale.
So we might want to consider calling it an excessive water use charge. Think about that. We have a council meeting that starts in 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
we need to go upstairs without, okay, we'll see everybody
So-
upstairs.
However, we may be running late because we have to get tax set up, it usually takes 15 minutes, but don't get lost when we.
Thank you, everybody. I know you need to get out here a little bit, but you guys got it.
I'll, rework my numbers.
We're going to, it's, 15 around 75.
I'll rework my numbers.
I know.
You double check.
Double check them.
And then I'll just.
Should we consume?
And you're right,
It makes sense.
it makes sense, yeah.
What do
Yes,
you mean it makes sense?
Definitely in the.
Are we done? Are we
That's the
done?
last thing you want to do is make sense.
Shocking.
Doesn't always make sense, this will make sense.